Okay, welcome to this video here on how to find equations from linear tables. This video is going to teach you two things: how to recognize a linear table, and then once you find it, be able to write the equation. So let's get started. Here's a table. The first question you want to ask yourself is, what do we look for in a linear table? Well, when you're thinking to yourself, you want to say, does this table increase or decrease by the same amount each time? Emphasizing on the same amount. In this table here, you see it goes 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, and so on. In this table, it's increasing by 2 each time, which is the same amount each time. When you see this, you know that the table is going to be linear. So therefore, if I were to take these points and graph them out, you could also verify that they're linear by noticing that these points are all collinear, or in a straight line. Once you know that you have a linear equation, or a linear table, then we got to talk about how to write the equation. So the next thing is, let's review again the equation of a line. If you know the slope, which is the m value, and you know b, which is the y-intercept, then you have all the pieces you need to write the equation. So this rate that you're seeing right here, or the amount that it's increasing by, is the slope. So that's going to go in this spot right here for the 2. That's because this table is increasing by 2 each time, which is going to be your slope. The next part is finding the y-intercept. When you're finding the y-intercept, you're trying to find the zero term of the table. The zero term of the table is always going to be where you see x equals 0. So in this case, the value is 10, so therefore my y-intercept will be 10. That's all there is to it. It's that easy when the table works out nice and it's given to you in a format where your x values increase by 1. So what I want to have you do now is to move on to these 6 practice questions and decide if each one of them is going to be linear, and if it is linear, find the equation. So here's an example with pieces of bread and grams of fiber. Decide if this table is linear and what is the equation. Pause the video now and decide for yourself. Okay, hopefully you found out the fact that it is linear because it's increasing by 5 each time in the outputs that you see right here, when the inputs also are increasing at a constant rate of plus 1. Notice that the inputs have to be going up at a constant rate just as the outputs are as well. Sometimes the tables will not have these in the right order, or they might skip some numbers. So just be aware of that as we go forward. But since this is increasing by 5, that is the slope. So you should then be able to write the equation y equals 5x. The reason there's no y-intercepted is because the zero term is 0 for the output. So it's just the equation y equals 5x. Now try this question and see if you can get this one correct. Alright, hopefully this question has you looking at increasing the cost of chicken based on each piece that's added to the total. So it starts out at $7, and then if you make a table, adding 50 cents each time makes the table look like this. After you've made the table from the word problem, you'll notice that it's adding 50 cents each time, which is the same amount. Whenever you see that, you know this is going to be a linear graph and a linear equation. So knowing this then, I know my slope is going to be 0.5, and the y-intercept is going to be 7, because the zero term is 7 in the table. Try this next question. Pause the video and see if you can get this one correct. Hopefully in this one right here you notice that you were careful. The numbers here are not in the right order and they skip around. So be careful. The first thing I would suggest doing is putting these numbers in order of the inputs from least to greatest, like you would normally. When you do that, you're going to notice that this thing starts at 10 and then starts counting down by ones. Now it does happen to skip over the 4, but if you kept on going, you will eventually get to also the 10 being 0, going down by ones. So yes, this thing is going down by the same amount each time, so yes, it is linear. And the equation then is going to be y equals negative 1x, because it's going down by 1 each time, plus 10, because the zero term is 10 for the output. Alright, let's try this next question. Okay, hopefully you notice that this table is also out of order, and it's also skipping numbers, and it doesn't even use all whole numbers. It has a decimal one as for the input as well. So this is a little screwy. So what I would suggest doing when there's numbers that are all kind of jumbled up, out of order, and getting skipped, first of all, put them in order. So rearrange the table from least to greatest, least at the top, greatest at the bottom for your inputs. As you start to look at this thing, unfortunately there's nothing that's in a nice order that goes up constantly on the left-hand side. Do you see how it goes up by 0.5, then by 1, then it jumps over 3 and goes to 4, and then 4 to 5. So when you see this kind of table that's a little bit messed up like this, it's better to look at the slopes between the points. So if I took the 2 points, 1, 10 and 2, 5, and try to figure out what their slope was, I would take the change in the y's, which is going to be 5 minus 10, and then take my 2 minus 1 and then divide that fraction out, well, I'll get negative 5 on the top and then 1 on the bottom, and my slope fraction will be negative 5. Then you can move on to the next pair of dots or coordinates that you know in the table, which would be then 4, 2.5 and 2, 5, and find the slope of that. When you subtract those out, you get negative 2.5 divided by 2, which that fraction turns into negative 5/4. Right here, bam, the thing's over because the slopes are different. And when they're different, this cannot be linear. So at this point, you can shut the problem down and say this is not going to be a linear table, so therefore you cannot have a linear equation for it. Alright, pause the video for this question and see what you can come up with. Alright, this question here, James planted a bush, and then the year after he had 17 flowers. From there, it doubled every time. So read the word problem. It would be best if you made a table from that word problem. In this case here, 1 year after he had 17 flowers, and then from there it doubled every year. And in this case, if you're asking yourself, is this linear? You'd hopefully say no, because it's not increasing by the same amount each time. So you can shut the problem down again right here and say no more to the problem being a linear table, and there's no linear equation to go with it. Alright, pause the video on this next one here and see if you can decide if this is linear and what's the equation. Alright, hopefully you're noticing that this is skipping by numbers. They do happen to be going at plus 2, plus 2, plus 2 down the side. So when the left-hand side goes up at a constant rate and the right-hand side also goes up at a constant rate, that you can then say right away that it's linear. Another option is to, again, like I said, when you see skipping going on, just check out the slope. If you take negative 2 minus 7, subtracting the y's, and subtract the x's 2 minus 0, and make your fraction and get 5 halves, and do it again on the other ones, you'll notice that those also come out to be 5 halves as well. And if I keep going down the list, you'll notice that all these subtract the y's and divided by the x's subtracted as well, give you a slope of 5 halves. So just seeing that all the slopes are the same, or noticing that the inputs were going up at a constant rate and so was the outputs, that you have a linear table. Now the equation is important because you may have overlooked the fact that the slope is 5 halves, that it's going up every 2 units for the 5-unit increase that you're getting for the outputs. So be careful. If you find the slope here between the points, you really can't mess this number up, and the zero term is already given to you. That's why you see an intercept of negative 7. Hopefully this video has at least exposed you to some of the strategies and ideas associated by looking at a table and finding a linear equation. Good luck in your future, and hopefully this video has helped you.